Now, when Skoda launched its second generation Superb, it was a car that really shook up the market. Underneath, it was basically a VW Passat, but on top it had a much bigger body, and that meant space to rival a Mercedes S-Class. With this third generation Skoda Superb, well, Skoda have upped the ante further. This car is more premium and more modern than ever. It actually shares a platform with VW's Arteon, Tiguan and also Audi's Q3. Now in hatch form, it's a very practical car. In estate form that we've got here today, it just raises the stakes even more. So we're going to take a look, see what it's like inside, see what it's like to drive, and try to help you work out which Superb you should be looking at if you want a used car that is spacious, practical and relatively cheap to run. The Superb name wasn't dreamt up by a marketing committee in an office somewhere. It actually harked back to the original Superb from the 1930s. This is a car that was built by luxury Czech car maker AZNP. When the first modern Superb was launched many years later, it had a relatively conservative design but majored on enormous cabin space. There were also plenty of benefits to the car that came from being part of the VW group, such as solid and dependable build quality, good equipment levels and an appealing mix of powertrains, from a 1.8 litre 4-cylinder turbo right up to a 2.8 litre V6 and some motorway munching diesels thrown in for good measure too. The Superb soon became a popular choice for families and taxi drivers alike. Since then, the Superb has evolved into a more rounded offering in this third generation, benefiting from a more stylish and modern design without doing away with the spacious interior that made it so popular. In 2024, Skoda unveiled its latest generation of the Superb, and if you want to know more about that new Superb, click the link above. But today we're going to be focusing on this third generation Superb, which ran from 2015 to 2024. When it comes to the exterior, the third generation is much more stylish than the model it replaced, but it still isn't what you'd call out there in terms of design. I think it's aged incredibly well, especially in higher spec trims such as Sportline or L&K, and it's a quietly handsome car in the right specification. One thing that is for sure though is it's hard to disguise the sheer size of the Superb. This is a big car. In terms of design, the key standout features of this generation were the new look headlamps and grille, and overall it's just a much sleeker offering. Inside the Skoda Superb, well, it's typical VW Group Germanic fare, I'd say, which is that everything feels very solid and very well put together. The buttons, the dials, they all feel like they're going to stand up to the test of time. And I think the setup as a whole is one that if you've been in a VW Group car will feel very familiar and very easy to get used to. The steering wheel in this SEL model is very nice. The buttons are very solid on the steering wheel, the controls you've got there. The one slight downside potentially in a car of this age is that actually the little digital display screen that you've got in the dash is very small and does not stand up to more modern cars. Obviously it's absolutely tiny, and when you look at cars nowadays where you can have a complete digital dash, it seems very dated. As we are in the SEL trim, we have the larger touchscreen infotainment system that's very clear to use. It all makes a lot of sense. You've got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, so you're probably just going to default to those anyway. We've got heated seats as well. We've got leather seats. These also have electric controls. So it just feels like a high quality place, especially in these higher specs. The brushed metal is quite a nice touch as well. And overall, I think you'll find the cabin just feels very, very usable and very well built, and that it will stand up to family life. So it's also best obviously to check that everything works, because this car will have been used potentially as a family wagon, so it could have had a relatively hard life, but it's built to stand up to that. So make sure that everything's in working condition, there's no scuffs, no damage anywhere, and also there is the potential on a high mileage Superb that it may have been used as a taxi, so make sure that there's no damage to the seats, you've not got any saggy cushions, there's no tears in the leather as well. Now, Skoda is known for producing cars that have some very useful practical features, so it's worth checking inside the fuel cap to see if the ice scraper is there, check inside the driver's door to see if the umbrella is still there, and one thing that definitely will still be there is the little helpful ticket holder for your parking tickets in the front windscreen. Now, I have been going on and on about space when it comes to the Superb, and this is why. In the back here, there is just so much room. It is such a big, spacious, comfortable place to be. Now, the driver's seat is in my position. I'm just over 6'1", so the driver's seat is really quite far back. And despite that, me at 6'1" behind a driver of 6'1", I've got so much room, loads of space for my knees, such a big gap there, and even sitting up straight, I've still got headroom as well. So in terms of family life, fitting child seats in the back is going to be dead easy. The doors open nice and wide, and once you've got those child seats inside, even if you've got an Isofix, because there are Isofix points here on both sides, you're still going to have plenty of space around the kids. And also it's going to reduce potentially some of those scuff marks to the back of the seat, because they might just be a little bit out of reach of little one's feet. There are some door bins here where you could fit a large bottle and some other items, and they are felt lined, so you shouldn't get too much rattling noise. We don't have any USB connectors back here, but we do have a 12-volt socket. And overall, yeah, these seats are actually really quite comfy as well, these leather seats. They're very nice in terms of adult passengers. So very, very happy. It's just a place where I could definitely see myself spending lots of time and being very happy on a long journey. So the Superb is a very popular towing car, specifically those all-wheel drive models. So if you're looking at a used Superb, it's worth checking whether the car has a tow bar attached and doing a bit of digging into the usage of the car. Obviously, if that tow bar has been used to tow a boat, for example, well, then the back of the car could have ended up in the water. So it's always best to do some digging. Now, the bit above where the tow bar would be is obviously the boot, and that is the big selling point of the Superb. It is the party trick. It's basically an absolutely cavernous space. It's big, it's square, it's completely usable. Whether you are heading on a family trip to the south of France or you are doing a tip run, you'll find that there is bags of space for whatever you want to put in the back. Now, Superbs, because of this space, are very well used as taxis, specifically for airport runs. So when inspecting the car, have a good look, make sure there's no scuffs or damage to the back of the vehicle where people have been lifting big heavy cases in and out. You've got a 12-volt socket in here, you've got quite a few lashing points, you've even got a ski hatch as well, and of course if you somehow want even more space than this 660 litres, you can put those rear seats down and basically turn the car into a van. Now, before we talk driving in the Superb, let's start with the engines, because the engine choice is quite varied, and that comes from the fact that Skoda is part of the VW group. So being part of the VW group, they get access to lots of VW parts. Specifically, as I mentioned, those engines. The engine choices are really quite varied. So that's a positive from the perspective of you will find an engine that works for you, I have no doubt of that. But it does mean that going through the engines can be a little bit complicated with lots of stats and numbers. So I will try to simplify it a little bit. The petrol options available are 1.4 litre, 1.5 litre, 2 litre. We'll start with the 1.4 litres, as those were initially offered with the Superb on launch of this generation. There are two versions of the 1.4. We would recommend the slightly higher powered version, which is the 148 brake horsepower version. The 1.5 litre that was later introduced, that is also 148 brake horsepower, and that's what I'm in today. This is a 1.5 TSI SEL Superb. That is a real good blend, that engine. It's got enough power to kind of get you up and down the motorways, on and onto motorways if the car is fully loaded with family and luggage, etc., without being massively uneconomical. I think that the lower powered 1.4, it's just not quite enough for a car of this size, unless you just want the cheapest petrol engine you can get. Now, later on, there was a 1.4 litre plug-in hybrid version of the Superb that was introduced, and that will give you electric-only range of just over 30 miles. In terms of the 2 litre petrol versions, newer cars have a 187 horsepower option, and then there's also the top of the range 2 litre, which has 276 horsepower, and you will tend to find that in Sportline or L&K all-wheel drive versions. Now, as you would expect for a car that is a consummate load lugger, there are some good diesel engine choices as well as the petrols. So starting off, you have a 1.6 litre TDI, which has only 118 brake horsepower. Now, that is purely for economy, that car. If you just want the cheapest Superb to run and own, then go for the 1.6 litre diesel. There are also a couple of 2 litre variants as well, and probably the all-round pick of the bunch, certainly if you're looking at diesel, is going to be the 148 horsepower diesel unit. It's a really good blend of performance and economy. Now, this is not a performance car, so when I say performance, I mean the ability to get up to speed and, you know, carry all the things on board that you're going to carry. If emissions is your focus, then you're best off opting for that plug-in petrol version or the 1.6 TDI green line, because that emits around 109 grams of CO2 per kilometre. The 2 litre TDIs are around 112 grams per kilometre. Obviously, it is best to avoid those 2 litre petrol versions if you are buying this car purely for economy and running costs. They are not going to suit that purpose. Well, the Superb is a car that really does fit any environment. Obviously, it is best suited to longer journeys. It is very, very happy on the motorway. It's a big, comfortable car with plenty of space. But it's actually surprisingly maneuverable around town too. The steering is very, very light. It's got a decent turning circle. So you won't find any problems in a more urban environment in this car, aside from perhaps parking. It's quite a long vehicle. So if you're in a multi-story car park or you're parking on city streets, then obviously, you know, a car of this length is going to be more difficult for you to park. Now, on those motorway journeys, you will find that the Superb is very refined. It's not the quietest car. Obviously, an Audi, for example, if you're in an Audi A6 Avant or a BMW 5 Series, you know, they are going to be better insulated. It's going to be quieter on the move than a Superb is, but they are obviously a lot more expensive than a Superb. Obviously, look through the cabin very, very closely. This is a family workhorse for the most part, this car, so it will have had family life going on in it. So just make sure that there's no rattles and squeaks. Everything's kind of screwed in and bolted down where it's supposed to be. Then there's no damage anywhere below eye level. The other main thing to check is the infotainment system. Some early models of the Superb could be a bit glitchy, shall we say. It's very easily rectified, but it's always worth checking that everything works as it's supposed to within the infotainment screen. And obviously, if you're in a model such as this, the SEL or the L&K or the Sportline, then check and make sure that all those toys you get work. So this car, for example, has heated seats, so make sure that the heated seats work. It has electric seats, make sure that the electric seats work. You know, just do the obvious things. Check everything over in the cabin. Make sure that all of those items that you want from the car are actually working correctly. One thing to be aware of with the Superb is that, yes, it does have a really good reliability record, but there was quite a significant recall from models that were 2020 to 2024. There was an issue with the heat shield placement. So if you're looking at a vehicle from those model years, 2020 to 2024, then obviously check that firstly, does the vehicle need to be recalled? And if so, has it been done already? As I mentioned, it's not really up there with an Audi A6 Avant or a BMW 5 Series or a Mercedes E-Class. Now, whilst it can match those cars for space, it obviously doesn't match those cars for outright quality, but it comes in at a much cheaper price point. You'd say that really you're going up against a Ford Mondeo or a VW Passat. In the case of the Mondeo is potentially going to be a bit better to drive, although the Superb is by no means bad to drive. It doesn't wallow. It turns in where you want it to turn in. It's not, you know, a big wobbly thing. It's actually quite nicely put together for a car this size, how it holds itself around corners. But the Mondeo could arguably drive a bit better. The VW Passat is probably another good rival, and what you will find with the Passat is that obviously it shares the same underpinnings as this car and will share many similar parts. The cabin quality will also be just that little bit higher than in the Superb, but for me personally, the Passat doesn't necessarily offer the kind of versatility and practicality of the Superb. I'd say that really the Superb against those two cars majors on practicality. If that's what you want, then the Superb is the obvious choice. If it was down to me and I wanted the most practical car I could get, then few cars are as good all round as this Superb, and it's probably the one that I would opt for. If you are looking for a car that is the perfect blend of space, practicality and economy, well, it's safe to say you could do much worse than the Skoda Superb. This really is a car that can do it all. Now, having watched this video, you may have found, you know what, I'm interested in a Superb, what should I go for? Well, that really comes down to what kind of journeys you're going to be doing. If the bulk of your driving is long distance and spent on the motorway, then obviously opt for a diesel. If actually you're going to be doing quite a lot of shorter local journeys, well, the 1.5 litre petrol TSI is absolutely perfect for that. We would say it's best to opt for SE Tech and above, because going below that doesn't really give you all the kind of toys that you're going to want for a car like this. If you've enjoyed this need to know used review of the second generation Skoda Superb, please give us a like, and obviously remember to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon so that you are notified every time we upload a new video.